Recently, there has been a little bit of controversy stirring up in the MCU. After revelations in the first episode of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, some people are wondering just how the Avengers get paid and even what exactly their job title is, if being an Avenger is a real job. So watchers of the Marvel Multiverse, join me as we observe all that occurs. Shortly after the release of the first episode of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, there were many fans of the MCU that were very upset with Tony Stark, and that is apparently because he did not pay the Avengers, as it was revealed when Falcon was trying to get a loan to help his sister's business. So let's take a look at this. Let's break down just if Tony should pay the Avengers or if somebody else should be. Each of the main Avengers needs some sort of income to make money in the MCU. To some extent, it seems that their equipment, gear, the Avengers compound, and Avengers Tower were all paid by Tony Stark, as he willingly helped fund or accepted the contract to support the Avengers initiative. We know that Tony's source of income is his company. He is probably the easiest to pinpoint where his money is coming from. The second easiest to pinpoint is Bruce Banner, because he works for Tony Stark up until he leaves for Sakaar as Hulk at the end of Age of Ultron. As for what he does as Professor Hulk during the Blip, that is not quite as clear, as it appears he is not working for Tony anymore. It's also easy to guess where Black Widow and Hawkeye's money comes from. Both of them were S.H.I.E.L.D. agents and continued to be government employees after S.H.I.E.L.D. fell. Simply put, they were paid by the government, and after Hawkeye's retirement, he probably had his own retirement funds or government stipends coming in. To some extent, Captain America may have been a commissioned officer in the army, at least part of his time after being woken up after being frozen for 70 years. So he likely made a living off the government, getting paid through the army and government contracts. After Captain America Civil War, however, he likely lived on the goodwill of those he helped, because he was a vigilante and was on the run. Falcon was kind of in the same boat, especially because he was retired Air Force, so he was likely paid on government contracts as well as the goodwill of those he helped, just like he said in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. But he was also on the run after Captain America Civil War and seems to have been pardoned along with everyone else who didn't want to sign the Sokovia Accords, so in the end there is more than just the 5 years that he was gone during the Blip that he wasn't getting paid anything. As for Bucky, before the snap he lived in Wakanda working as a farmer for them. So, after he was returned and was pardoned, he is likely in the same boat as many of his other former military Avengers. Rhodey is another easy one, as he is active military, so he is getting the pay of an Air Force colonel. Wanda and Vision, on the other hand, are a little bit more difficult to pinpoint, because their full-time position was being an Avenger. And since they had no ties to former military, it was probably likely much harder for them to get contracts. But at the beginning of Captain America Civil War, she is working as an agent for the Avengers, but it is never really answered who they are working for, who is paying them, and just who assigned them with the mission to find Rumlow. And Vision doesn't necessarily need money because he doesn't eat or sleep. So how Wanda afforded a new car after the snap, or how Vision was able to get the deed to land and prepare to build a house prior to the snap, it's a bit of a mystery. So the question is, did Tony pay them, or should he have paid them? It is unlikely that he did, because the Avengers initiative wasn't his baby, it was just a project he supported. Again, we do know he did pay for Avengers Tower and the Avengers compound in upstate New York, as well as funding much of the amenities that came with those places. And he very well could have paid or given his time to help keep their equipment up to date after S.H.I.E.L.D. fell. While he might have been able to pay them, they weren't technically his employees, so he really had no reason to. After all, at the end of Age of Ultron, he does quit the Avengers, so for a time he wasn't even technically part of the team, but he did still help fund them. But there is the possibility, especially because Wanda and Vision's income is a little bit suspect, that he did pay them, as they did not have the connections other Avengers had. And he could have also felt guilty for Wanda giving her money to help her out because he's the one that kinda screwed her life over, as well as possibly paying Vision because he reminded him of Jarvis and he wants to help his old friend out. After Civil War, however, he did get involved in the Avengers again pretty heavily, so he could have been paying the remaining ones, which does mean he wouldn't be paying Wanda, Falcon, or Captain America. And then again, Tony probably didn't need to pay them at all because technically they were government employees. After all, in the beginning, the Avengers is technically a S.H.I.E.L.D. initiative, and after S.H.I.E.L.D.'s fall, that would just pass on to another government entity, possibly SWORD, the FBI, or the Office of the Secretary of Defense. We do know that their position in the world isn't quite clear because of Captain America Civil War, so it's never exactly clear who keeps assigning them missions and sending them around the world to protect people. Prior to Captain America Civil War, they are sent out to Lagos to find Rumlow. So who exactly told them to go and who was paying them to be out there? And if they were tracking down enemies of America, were they just superpowered American agents? Or were they truly vigilantes acting of their own accord? Because of the introduction of the Sokovia Accords, it seems to me that they were working as vigilantes, and up until then the world was just kind of okay with them doing their thing, which means that they wouldn't have been paid by Tony or by the government. The most likely course of action was that they were paid on contracts, that they were kind of mercenaries with morals. Again, the biggest hint of this is the first episode of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, because Sam explains that he works on government contracts as well as the goodwill of those he helps. And on top of that, a lot of the work that they do is not on contract, which means a lot of the work they actually do is vigilante justice, where they don't get paid anything. Because for a large part, the Avengers are not employees of the government, nor are they employees of Tony Stark, at least up until the Sokovia Accords. So those who ended up siding with Tony probably got paid through the government and possibly a little bit through Tony, whereas those who were on the run with Captain America were fugitives, so they likely didn't get paid anything at all and lived on the charity of others for years. And with the events of the Blip, it does make some sense why Sam might not have been able to get a loan, because the Avengers' income, especially his, was a bit suspect. But then this all leads to the question, does any of this matter at all? And should the finances of the Avengers matter to the MCU? I'm personally of the opinion that they should not, because this has not come into question up until The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So a lot of this is just to help tell Falcon's story, especially because when you look back at WandaVision, how were she and Vision able to get a house and a brand new car after the Blip? So the finances didn't really matter there because it wasn't part of Wanda's story. Over the years for characters like Spider-Man, finances have played an important part, so it's kind of on a case-to-case basis. But a large part of the joy of watching superhero movies and Marvel movies is to imagine what it would be like to be a hero without having to worry about the problems we face in real life. While it does make sense to make certain stories more relatable, this issue is the exception and not the rule, which kind of proves the point that it doesn't matter who is paying the Avengers, and that Tony nor the government needed to, because stories like this would eventually show up anyway. It is nice to get some story on these characters' individual lives, and it does make sense to add them to make them more relatable. But in the end, what we want to see and what matters is what villains are fighting what heroes, what Easter eggs we will see from Marvel Comics, and what big overarching story and villain is being set up to fight the Avengers. So in the end, the Avengers getting paid is so minuscule compared to some of the other things we will see in the MCU. So while some people may be up in arms that Tony didn't pay them, it is important to remember that this is all part of their story, and these stories were going to happen one way or the other. But some of that is just what I think, and I want to hear what you think. Do you think Tony should have paid the Avengers, or do you think the government should have paid the Avengers? Or how do you think that they made their money? Thank you so much for watching. Please like this video and subscribe to the Marvelous Wave to assemble and join our team, and have a great day.